They bring a unique perspective. They are at the forefront. They are today's leaders. Brought to you by Get Assist, the people in Calgary that bring passion and dedication to what they do. Today's leaders with Angela Kokott on News Talk 770.
When the price of oil goes down, the need for a helping hand goes up. You've heard the statistics when it comes to jobless rates. Behind those statistics are the men and women who have lost jobs and how their loved ones are impacted by the downturn. And when a downturn occurs, more people turn to a variety of social service agencies. Those social service agencies, well, they're also struggling from a decrease in donations. For many years, United Way Calgary has raised money, established partnerships with a number of agencies. The woman who leads the organization knows what it means to struggle with poverty, also knows the role education plays in creating a brighter outcome for the poor. I am pleased to welcome Dr. Lucy Miller, President and CEO of United Way Calgary and Area, to today's leaders. Hello, Dr. Miller.
Hi, Angela.
Thanks for making some time for us today. In today's leaders, we hear so much about Dr. Lucy Miller when there's the United Way campaign, the fundraising drive, but we don't always know Lucy Miller, the woman. So I got to go a little ways back here, and actually geographically as well, because you come from Cape Breton.
Well, I like to tell people I come from a small island 2,000 miles off the coast of France.
Which isn't too far off that. So you grew up in a small community?
Just a village.
Just a village.
Yes.
Tell me, though, about growing up, because you come from a large family, and I kind of have a soft spot for large families.
Well, yes, I'm one of 8 children, so I grew up in a small village. There were probably 50 families in our village, and grew up in extreme poverty. My father was an alcoholic, and it really makes you realize that we never know people's stories. My father was a wonderful man, but he struggled with alcohol his whole life. But it makes it tough on a family, and it certainly impacts you when it comes to income. So. We lived in really not much more than a shack. We had no running water, an outdoor toilet, coal stove to heat the house, and but it was, you didn't notice it at the time, really.
Well, and I think that's the case, though, with a lot of people who grow up in poverty. Mm-hmm. They don't know anything differently. But you're the middle of 8. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm curious with birth order and what that means to a personality and how your character is formed. What do you think you brought to that when you were the middle child of a large family?
It's such an interesting question, Angela, because I always, when I look back at that, I think my role as a peacemaker and a pleaser started with that. Like I used to, I wanted to make sure my mother didn't worry about anything else. So I didn't want to be one more worry. So I always tried to be the one to calm everything down, to de-escalate things. And I even remember playing that role as a very, very small child. I remember when I was 4, sitting by the side of our house, it was my birthday, hoping that my mother didn't remember it was my birthday. And I think I was about 4. Because I didn't want her to worry about that, So I do think that's a middle child thing.
Was there someone in particular, whether it be a family member, a teacher, who you really admired?
My mom, for sure. I just, even now, I don't know how she did it. How do you do that with an alcoholic husband and 8 children and you have no money? So my mom, for sure, because somehow in all of that, she was so resilient and such a positive person, and somehow made me believe I could do anything I wanted. So my mom, definitely, she's number 1. But then my teachers, I so admired my teachers, because you know how you said at the beginning, yes, when you're in poverty, you don't really realize it. But I would look at my teachers, and they were everything I wanted to be. I don't know how I knew, but I knew I wanted to be like them, so.
You wanted to be a teacher?
Well, I wanted to be like them. I didn't realize at that time I wanted to be a teacher, but I kind of realized that as I grew. That was in my very earliest years. I wanted to be like them. I never thought, Angela, that I could be a teacher. But coming from where I came from, I didn't think that was possible.
Didn't know that you wanted to be a teacher, but you sure liked what the teachers represented. And some of the teachers in high school, what they wore the X ring from SFX,
Yes.
St. Francis Xavier. So how did you then make that leap from saying, I want that ring?
I don't know, Angela, how I knew to do this, but somehow I wrote to the Dean of Women. And I didn't know her name, so I wrote, Dear Dean of Women, I want to come to St. FX, and I told her my story, but I said, the only way I can come is if I can get a job. Are there jobs in Antigonish? Well, she wrote me back right away, and that was before email. So she wrote me a letter. Right away I got it. She said, you come, dear. I will have a job waiting for you. She said, come right to my office. And I remember getting on the bus with my little suitcase full of rags, really, you know. And I get to St. FX and I walk up to Sister Joan's office. Her name was Sister Joan Ryan. And into her office I go, and she said, I have 3 jobs. You can do this or this or this. What would you like to do? Well, imagine coming from where I came from, having choice like that. I was just so overwhelmed at that opportunity. I said to her, well, could I do them all? And she only asked me one question. She said, well, could you keep your marks up? I said, yes. And you know what? From then on, Angela, I was never poor again. I was in Halifax for 12 years and as a teacher. And interestingly enough, I started teaching in a little 3-room school. And then I moved to a bigger school, you know, and then eventually became principal there, and then moved to Ottawa, and had a wonderful 20 years in Ottawa teaching, and then working as a principal, and then a superintendent, and teaching at the University of Ottawa and at Queen's University, and I did my doctorate while I was there at the University of Toronto. And there's a great story about me doing my doctorate. I had just started my doctorate when my mom was diagnosed with dementia, and she came to live with me in Calgary and or in Ottawa, but I was already started, and I didn't have anything in place to help me look after her. So she was coming to class with me in Toronto. So I had somebody who looked after her during the day, and then I would pick her up on Friday after work. And we would drive to Toronto, Mom and I, stay in a hotel. She would come to class with me and just sit there with me, and I would hold her hand, and she would look at magazines and catalogs, and then she'd wander around a little bit. And then I was teaching at the university. She would come in, and I'd be there standing behind her. She'd be sitting in one of the desks where all my students were. They were all teachers. And, you know, they all knew what I was doing. And I'd be like, brushing her hair or talking to my students, and there was my mom. I have to say that looking after Mom for 10 years it was before she passed away really changed how I view the world. Remember, I have no children, so I was really, although I worked and I had a husband, my life was really all about me. My life was pretty easy, not like when you're trying to raise young children and you're trying to juggle career and children and family. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty easy for me. And then all of a sudden, I had somebody else who was depending on me. And I learned so much about being outward focused and not being all about me from that. And right till the day she died, so the last 2 years of Mom's life, she couldn't speak. She lost her expressive language. And by then, she was in St. Patrick's home. And one night I won an award, and I always talked to Mom as if she understood everything that was going on, because there's so much we don't understand about dementia.
What they're understanding,
yes,
right?
What they're taking in.
Yeah.
So that night, I went every night to my mom to, feed her supper, brush her hair, get her ready for bed and all that. The nurses would do that, but still I liked doing it. So anyway, this night, they gave me a little video clip of me getting the award. So on my way home, I wanted to show her that. So she and I and one of the nurses was in a little room with a big TV and VCR, and I put this little video clip in, and I told her about the award, and she watched it, and I wasn't sure if she knew what she was watching. Now, she hasn't said a word in 2 years, remember. So St. Patrick's, they had never heard her speak. So Mom watched that, and it was only like maybe a 2 or 3 minute clip. When it was finished, she looked me right in the face. And I didn't even know every time when I'd go see her if she even knew who I was. She knew I was someone she really liked, but not necessarily that I was Lucy, her daughter. She looked at me and she said, when you have a baby, you never know how it's going to turn out.
You are the Chief Superintendent of the Calgary School Board, and then you retire from that job.
No, I was actually headhunted for my new job.
For the United Way?
Yes.
So you were still the Chief Superintendent,
I was.
and you saw this as an opportunity that you couldn't pass up?
Yes, and the headhunter, I knew him. We were on a committee together. And he came to my office one day, and I thought he was coming about committee work, something we were wrestling with. And no, he was coming to try to encourage me to apply for the job of the CEO at United Way. And I said, there's no way I'm doing that. Like, I'm not interested in that at all. I had never done anything but education, so I didn't imagine myself doing anything else. So 3 times he actually came back. The 3rd time he said to me, Lucy, think about how you've enjoyed bringing people together around issues at the school district, like bringing parents together when there was a school to close or when something needed to be done, like there were too many kids and not enough schools, and you had to come up with a solution, and how you did it together with everybody. Imagine if you could do that citywide around some of the issues that are important to you. When he said that, Angela, then I felt, okay, now you have a responsibility, because I've always been a big believer that opportunities are put in your path all the time. It's up to you whether you take them or not. So then I went to United Way, and I didn't know anything, and I just am so proud of them for taking a chance with me, because they didn't know me really. And I've had a wonderful, this is my 4th year at United Way, and it's an unbelievable organization. And I've learned a whole new thing about our city and how wonderful it is, and how amazing it is to have an organization that can bring people together around the issues, so that, and this is right now, it's never been more important. Like, we have a city right now that's hungry for leadership. It's hungry for people who will be positive and who will get things done. In difficult times, you have to do things differently. And if there's ever a city that can do that, it's Calgary. And if there was ever an organization that can do it, it's us. Leaders never do it alone. Always when people congratulate me about things I've accomplished, I say, look, just look around me and you'll know why I've been successful. I have been blessed to be surrounded by wonderful people.